World War II remains one of the most studied chapters in human history, a time of unimaginable horror and darkness, but also of extraordinary courage and sacrifice. But for some who served, it was more than this battle between nations. It was a brush with something unexplained, and something we still don't have a clear answer for to this day. In August of 1942, Sergeant Stephen J. Brickner of the 1st Marine Division reported what would become one of the earliest known American eyewitness accounts of an unknown and mysterious phenomenon. It was a bright and sunny morning in Tulagi, a town and island part of the Solomon Islands in the Indian Ocean, about several hundred miles from Papua New Guinea. Brickner was with his squad on the island and in bivouac. Brickner recalls cleaning his weapon near his foxhole that morning at the first indication that something could be amiss. Air raid warnings began to sound, and Brickner slid into his foxhole and began to hear something else which puzzled him. At first, the assumption by him and others in his squad was that these Japanese planes were on a search for their fleet. But there in the sky, he saw what he estimates was over 150 metallic objects in a formation of 10 to 12 straight lines, a stark contrast from the usual tight V formation of 25 planes one would expect for such an operation by the Japanese. This formation of mysterious metallic objects was moving through the sky noticeably faster than Japanese planes would be, and the weirdest part, he couldn't make out any wings or tails on the objects. On a bright and sunny morning in Tulagi Island, all the way out there in the Solomon Sea, what did Sergeant Stephen Brickner and his squad see that morning all those years ago? And Brickner wasn't the only witness of anomalous and mysterious objects like these. In fact, over the coming months and years, reports from other servicemen flooded in. Historians and researchers now estimate several hundred credible reports came in from Allied airmen over the course of the war, mainly from US and British forces. Sightings were so common, in fact, that the mysterious objects, if that's what they even are, came to be known as Foo Fighters. In some of the closer first-hand encounters, pilots even recounted the mysterious objects following and keeping pace with their aircrafts, seemingly disobeying our known laws of physics and then simply disappearing. In one instance, in December of 1944, 2 American fighter pilots were visited and followed mid-flight for several minutes. It was early morning, a few days before Christmas, and Lieutenant David McFalls and Lieutenant Ned Baker of the 415th Night Fighter Squadron, based in France at the time, were flying a Bristol Beaufighter south of Hagenau over western Germany. Now, from the official logs of the 415th Night Fighter Squadron's intelligence reports, McFalls is quoted as saying, "At 0600 hours, we saw 2 lights climbing toward us from the ground. Upon reaching our altitude, they leveled off and stayed on my tail. The lights appeared to be large orange glows. After staying with the plane for 2 minutes, they peeled off and turned away, flying under perfect control, and then went out." Leveled off and stayed on his tail? Then peeled off and turned away, flying under perfect control? What could McFalls and Baker have possibly encountered up there? And as discussed, over the course of the war, hundreds of these reports came in from the Allies. So one thing was at least clear. Foo Fighters were not Allied aircraft. So what were they? Were they German? Japanese? By the end of 1944, Allied pilots were convinced that the strange lights and discs tracking their bombers weren't natural phenomena. These objects performed controlled maneuvers, moved with intelligent precision, and vanished at impossible speeds. The conclusion many reached quietly, privately, was that they must be German. And it seemed plausible. Nazi Germany had built the world's first operational jet fighter. They were testing wingless, disc-shaped aircraft. They had V-2 rockets striking London and were rumored to be working on technologies even beyond that. The Allies feared that perhaps, just perhaps, these sightings were glimpses of an unknown weapon, a silent, maneuverable, next-generation war machine. But after the war, those fears unraveled. Allied teams seized German research facilities. They spoke to captured scientists. They dug through blueprints, prototypes, entire underground bunkers, and they found nothing. No aircraft, no propulsion system matched any behavior described by the pilots. No glowing orbs, no hovering discs, no craft capable of shadowing a fighter plane and then vanishing into thin air. And then came the whispers. Unconfirmed accounts that the German Luftwaffe pilots had seen them too. On bombing raids over Russia, escort missions over France, pilots allegedly reported luminous objects pacing their aircraft or darting in and out of formation with inhuman speed. But the German high command, like the Allies, had no answers. Many dismissed it as combat stress or battlefield hysteria. Others weren't so sure. And from the Pacific theater came fewer accounts, but no less strange. Some US pilots noted that the silver discs they saw over the ocean seemed indifferent to both sides. They didn't attack, they didn't respond to gunfire, they simply hovered, observed, and disappeared. No records survive of Japanese pilots reporting such encounters, but absence of evidence in this case is not evidence of absence. And what makes the mystery more unsettling is this. Both Axis and Allied pilots believed the strange things in the sky belonged to the enemy. Yet, after the war, no one claimed them. Neither side had built them. Neither side had seen them on the ground. They were only seen in the air and only during combat. So, what were they? Surveillance devices? A natural phenomenon misunderstood? Or something else entirely? Something else that didn't choose sides?